The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of the Amazon rainforest, creating patches of golden light on the forest floor. Dr. Maya Rodriguez wiped sweat from her forehead as she carefully documented a rare orchid species. Around her, the forest hummed with life. Birds calling overhead, insects buzzing past her ears, and somewhere in the distance, a troop of monkeys moved through the trees. "Hey, Maya, you might want to see this," called Raj, her drone operator. His voice carried an unusual edge that made Maya look up from her notebook. Maya tucked her pencil behind her ear and made her way through the underbrush to where Raj hunched over his tablet. Two other team members, Lena, their botanist, and Diego, their local guide, gathered around, their faces showing a mix of confusion and disbelief. "What am I looking at?" Maya asked, squinting at the screen in the dappled sunlight. "I'm not sure," Raj admitted, adjusting the drone's altitude via the controls.
"I was doing the standard aerial survey of Section G when I spotted something that doesn't belong here." The image on the screen showed the expected sea of green treetops stretching to the horizon.
But there, in a small clearing about 2 miles north of their position, was something distinctly unnatural. A large white object with a shape that made no sense in this environment. "Is that?" Maya started, unable to finish her thought. "A boat?" Diego supplied, his brow furrowed. "It looks like a big boat." "Not just any boat," Lena said, taking the tablet and zooming in. "That's a cruise ship. Look at the structure, the decks, the railings. That's a massive passenger vessel." Maya took back the tablet, her scientific mind racing to find a logical explanation. There must be some mistake. We're over 200 miles from the Atlantic, and the nearest river that could possibly handle a vessel even half this size is at least 80 miles east. "The drone's working fine," Raj insisted. "I ran diagnostics this morning. Those are real-time images." Maya stared at the screen, at the unmistakable silhouette of what appeared to be a modern cruise liner, nestled among ancient trees, as if it had been carefully placed there by a giant child playing with toys. "We need to verify this," she decided, pulling out her satellite phone. "I'm calling base camp." 20 minutes and several calls later, Maya had confirmation that satellite imagery showed the same anomaly. What's more, after some quick research, base camp identified the ship as likely being the Aurora Borealis, a luxury cruise liner that had vanished without a trace 5 years ago, with all 3,000 passengers and crew on board. The disappearance had sparked worldwide headlines, massive search efforts, and countless conspiracy theories. "We have to check it out," Maya told her team, already packing her equipment. "This could be the scientific discovery of the decade." "Or the weirdest prank ever pulled," Lena added, though she too was repacking her gear with renewed energy. "It would be impossible to transport a cruise ship here," Diego said, shaking his head as he studied their maps. "No roads, no rivers big enough. The terrain is too rough for any kind of transport that could handle that weight. Which is exactly why we need to see it with our own eyes," Maya replied. They set off within the hour, Raj's drone leading the way like a mechanical scout. The journey was brutal, even for experienced field researchers. The rainforest didn't give up its secrets easily. They hacked through dense underbrush, crossed streams swollen from recent rains, navigated around sudden drops and hills, and endured the constant assault of insects and the oppressive humidity. By nightfall, they'd covered less than half the distance. They made camp in a small clearing, eating a simple meal of dried foods as they discussed theories about what they might find. None of their ideas, from elaborate movie set to military experiment gone wrong, seemed remotely plausible. The next day brought more of the same punishing trek, with afternoon rains turning the forest floor into a muddy obstacle course. Their pace slowed, frustrations mounted, and more than once Maya questioned whether they were on a fool's errand. On the morning of the third day, the forest began to change. Diego noticed it first. Certain birds had gone quiet, and the usual sounds of small mammals moving through the canopy were absent. "Something's not right," he whispered, stopping the group with a raised hand. "The forest is too quiet here." Maya felt it too, a strange heaviness in the air, a feeling of wrongness that defied scientific explanation. They moved forward more cautiously now, speaking in hushed tones. And then, without warning, the trees opened up into an unnatural clearing. The team stopped dead in their tracks, mouths hanging open in collective shock. There it was. Impossible. Undeniable. The Aurora Borealis cruise liner, All 18 decks and 1,000 feet of it rested on the forest floor as if it had been carefully placed there by some cosmic hand. Its white hull, now partially covered with climbing vines and patches of moss, rose like a mountain of metal and glass among the ancient trees. "This can't be real," Lena whispered, her scientific mind struggling to process what her eyes were seeing, but it was real. The ship's name was clearly visible on the bow, the blue and gold paint still vibrant despite years in the elements. Lifeboats hung along the sides. Windows reflected the sunlight. A massive funnel rose toward the sky. No signs of crash damage, Raj observed, using his camera to zoom in on different sections of the hull. No broken trees around it either. "It's like it was just placed here." Maya circled the perimeter of the clearing, her mind racing. There were no tracks, no evidence of any equipment that could have transported something this massive. The surrounding forest showed no signs of a path being cut to bring the ship here. 5 years, she murmured. "It's been sitting here for 5 years and no one found it." "Not surprising," Diego said. "This area isn't on any standard patrol routes. No villages within 50 miles. No reason for anyone to come here." As they completed their initial survey, Maya's satellite phone rang, the base camp calling for an update. She described what they'd found, her voice shaking slightly despite her scientific training. "Authorities are scrambling," her supervisor told her. "Military, maritime agencies, everyone. They're sending helicopters, but the nearest landing zone is still a day's hike from your position. They're asking you not to board the vessel until they arrive." Maya looked up at the towering ship, at the mysteries it held. "Understood," she said, though something in her tone must have given her away. "I mean it, Maya," her supervisor warned. "This is beyond our jurisdiction now. Just secure the perimeter and wait for the authorities." After ending the call, Maya gathered her team. "Officials are on the way, but they won't be here until tomorrow at the earliest." "So we wait?" Lena asked, though she sounded disappointed. Maya looked at the ship again, at the emergency access door visible on the lower deck, partially open as if inviting them in. She thought about the 3,000 people who had vanished without a trace, about their families who had lived with questions for 5 years, about the scientific impossibility towering before them. "We need to check for survivors," she said finally, "and assess any environmental hazards. That's within our purview as environmental scientists." Her team exchanged glances, understanding what she was really saying. "I have climbing equipment," Raj offered. "And I know basic first aid," Lena added. Diego nodded. "Someone should document this properly. For the authorities, of course." With that decided, they gathered their gear and approached the massive hull. Up close, the ship seemed even more impossible. A monument to human engineering sitting where no human creation of this size should ever be. The white paint was stained in places with green and brown streaks, where rainwater had carried forest debris down its sides. Using Raj's climbing gear, they created a way up to the partly open emergency door. Maya went first, pulling herself up the lines with practiced ease despite her racing heart. At the doorway she hesitated, suddenly aware that she was about to enter a place where 3,000 people had last been seen alive, before vanishing without explanation. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the door wider. It moved with surprising ease, as if the hinges had been recently oiled. A rush of air escaped from inside. Not the stale, moldy air one might expect from a vessel abandoned in a humid rainforest for years, but surprisingly fresh air carrying a strange, sweet scent unlike anything Maya had encountered in her scientific career. She switched on her flashlight and stepped inside, into a mystery that would change everything she thought she knew about the world. Maya's flashlight beam cut through the dimness of the ship's interior. The narrow service corridor stretched ahead, surprisingly clean for a vessel that had supposedly been abandoned in the rainforest for 5 years. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. One by one, her team members climbed through the doorway behind her. Raj adjusted his backpack, his expression a mixture of excitement and unease. Lena pulled out her own flashlight while Diego closed the door partway behind them, leaving it open just enough to ensure they could exit quickly if needed. "It smells like..." Lena paused, trying to place the strange sweet scent in the air, like flowers but not any flower I've ever catalogued. "The air conditioning seems to be working," Raj observed, noticing the subtle flow of cool air. "How is that possible? There's no way the ship's generators could still be running after all this time." Maya touched the wall. It hummed faintly beneath her fingertips. Something's definitely powering this ship. We need to find the bridge or the engine room. They moved cautiously through the service corridor, which eventually opened into a wider hallway lined with numbered doors. Crew quarters, Maya guessed. Everything was in perfect order. No signs of struggle, no evidence of panic or hasty evacuation, just an eerie emptiness, as if the entire crew had stepped out momentarily and would return at any second. Should we check the rooms? Lena asked, her hand hovering near one of the door handles. Maya nodded. Carefully. Don't disturb anything more than necessary. The first room they entered was small but comfortable, a single bed neatly made, a small desk with a framed photo of a smiling older couple, a half-empty glass of water on the nightstand. A uniform hung on the back of the door, pressed and ready to wear. On the desk calendar, a date was circled in red, June 17, 2020, the day the Aurora Borealis had disappeared from radar. Look at this, Diego called from another room. It's the same here. Like everyone just vanished in the middle of their normal routine. They checked several more crew quarters, finding similar scenes in each. Personal items left behind, daily routines interrupted. In one room, they found an open book on the bed, a bookmark still in place. In another, a half-written letter to someone's daughter. No signs of struggle, Raj noted, documenting everything with his camera. No evidence of any emergency. The team continued through the ship, moving from the crew quarters toward the passenger areas. They ascended a stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The emergency lights cast everything in a soft blue glow that made the whole experience feel dreamlike. The passenger deck was even more unsettling. The wide corridors were carpeted in deep blue, with ornate light fixtures along the walls, art hung in perfect alignment. Display cases showed luxury watches and jewelry, untouched behind their glass. A billboard announced the evening's entertainment, a magic show in the Grand Ballroom at 8 p.m., followed by dancing until midnight. 5 years, Maya reminded herself aloud. This has been here for 5 years. They passed a bar where glasses sat on tables, some still containing amber liquid. In the kitchen nearby, they found chopping boards with half-cut vegetables, pots with remnants of dried soup, plates ready to be served. It's like everything froze in a single moment, Lena whispered. The dining room was the most disturbing space yet. Dozens of tables were set for dinner, complete with fine china, crystal glasses, and polished silverware. Some tables had plates of food, now desiccated and mummified by the climate-controlled air. Rather than rotted as would be expected, chairs were pushed back at odd angles as if diners had stood up suddenly. A single child's shoe lay under one table. Whatever happened, it happened during dinner, Diego observed, his usual calm demeanor now visibly shaken. Maya approached the captain's table at the front of the dining room. A leather-bound logbook lay open, a pen placed neatly beside it. The final entry, written in a steady hand, sent a chill down her spine. 20:37 hours. Strange lights reported above the ship, unusual weather patterns forming. Nothing on radar. Passengers reporting odd sounds. Will investigate personally. And below that, in the same handwriting but more hurried, they're here. They've found us. God help us all. Maya read the words aloud to her team, her voice dropping to a whisper at the final line. Who's they? Raj asked, looking nervously toward the ceiling as if expecting to see something hovering there. Let's find the bridge, Maya decided, and the security office. If the power's still working, maybe the cameras recorded what happened. Their journey through the ship became more tense after that discovery. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak of the vessel settling made them jump. They found elevators that still worked, though none of them wanted to risk being trapped in one. Instead, they took the grand staircase that spiraled up through the center of the ship. The bridge was located on the highest deck, behind double doors marked crew only. Inside, they found an impressive array of equipment, radar screens, communication systems, navigation controls, and all apparently functional, lights blinking steadily in the dim room. This is impossible, Raj muttered, examining the equipment. These systems should have died years ago without maintenance. The captain's chair stood empty in front of the main console. On the floor beside it lay a captain's hat, as if it had fallen and no one had bothered to pick it up. Outside the large windows at the front of the bridge, they could see the rainforest canopy stretching into the distance, a jarring contrast to the technological environment of the ship's command center. The security office should be one level down, Diego said, consulting a framed map on the wall. They found it exactly where the map indicated, a small room filled with monitors showing feeds from cameras throughout the ship. Most displayed empty corridors and rooms, but a few screens were filled with static. Raj sat at the control panel. The system's still logging data. There should be recordings from that day. It took him several minutes to figure out the system, but eventually he managed to access the archived footage. The team crowded around as he pulled up videos from June 17, 2020. The footage showed a normal day on a luxury cruise ship. Passengers lounging by pools, attending activities, dining in restaurants, crew members going about their duties. Everything ordinary until approximately 8:20 p.m. At that point, the cameras captured a strange phenomenon. Diners in the main hall suddenly looked up, expressions changing from enjoyment to confusion to fear in rapid succession. Crew members rushed about. On the pool deck, passengers pointed at the sky. In every feed, people seemed to be reacting to something above the ship. Then, at precisely 8:24 p.m., a bright light flooded every camera feed. When it dimmed seconds later, the ship was empty. Every single person had vanished, leaving meals half-eaten, conversations unfinished, lives interrupted. That's not possible, Lena breathed, her scientific mind struggling to accept what she'd just witnessed. Maya watched the footage again, looking for any sign of editing or tampering. The light, it didn't come from within the ship. It came from above. So what are we talking about here? Diego asked, voicing what they were all thinking. Some kind of abduction? Raj shook his head. That doesn't explain how the entire ship ended up in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. No force on Earth could transport something this size intact through the jungle without leaving a trace. They sat in silence for a moment, the implications hanging heavy in the air between them. Finally, Maya stood. We need to keep exploring. There must be an explanation that makes sense. Maybe in the passenger cabins or the cargo hold. As if responding to her words, the lights in the security office flickered briefly. One of the monitors that had shown static suddenly cleared, revealing a feed from what appeared to be a ballroom. Something moved across the frame. Too quick to identify, but definitely not a camera glitch. Did you see that? Maya asked, pointing at the screen. The others nodded, their faces pale in the blue glow of the monitors. Looks like we're not alone here after all, Diego whispered. The team exchanged nervous glances, their earlier scientific curiosity now tinged with fear. Whatever had brought the Aurora Borealis to this impossible location, whatever had happened to the 3,000 people aboard, it might not be finished with its work. And now Maya and her team were here, inside its domain, cut off from the outside world until help arrived. If it arrived. We need to find that ballroom, Maya decided, her voice steadier than she felt. Whatever's happening here, we need to understand it. As they prepared to leave the security office, all the lights flickered again. This time, when they steadied, all the monitors showed the same image, the ballroom, empty except for a single figure standing in the center, its back to the camera. A figure that, as they watched in horrified fascination, slowly began to turn around. No one moved as they watched the figure on the security monitor slowly turn. The image flickered, distorting just as the face would have become visible. When the picture stabilized again, the ballroom was empty. Did everyone see that? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The team nodded, faces pale in the blue light of the monitors. Could be a glitch, Raj suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. These systems have been running without maintenance for 5 years. Or it could be survivors, Lena countered. Maybe not everyone disappeared that night. Diego shook his head. No one could survive alone on this ship for 5 years without outside supplies. And if there were survivors, why wouldn't they have tried to get help? Maya studied the ballroom layout on the monitor. We need to check it out. If there's someone or something else on this ship, we need to know. Shouldn't we wait for the authorities? Lena asked, looking nervously at the empty ballroom on the screen. They won't arrive until tomorrow at the earliest, Maya reminded them. And we're already here. If there are survivors who need help, every hour could matter. Nobody argued, but the earlier excitement of discovery had given way to a cautious tension. Maya led the way, Raj's map guiding them through the labyrinth of the massive ship. They descended 2 levels and made their way toward the stern, where the grand ballroom occupied a large section of the entertainment deck. The corridors were unnervingly silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems and their own footsteps on the carpeted floors. They passed a casino where chips still sat stacked on roulette tables, cards frozen in the middle of games. Through the windows of a luxury boutique, mannequins displayed fine clothes that would never be purchased. "It feels like a museum exhibit," Lena whispered. A perfect snapshot of a moment in time. They paused outside the ornate double doors of the grand ballroom. Gold lettering announced it as the Starlight Ballroom, with smaller text below indicating the night's entertainment. The amazing Alessandro and his mysteries of the mind. "Ready?" Maya asked, her hand on the door handle. The others nodded, flashlights raised. She pushed the door open, revealing a vast space designed for hundreds of guests. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, catching the light from their flashlights and scattering it in dazzling patterns across the room. A stage stood at the far end, curtains partially open. The dance floor stretched out before them, empty and polished to a mirror shine. "I don't see anyone," Diego said, sweeping his flashlight across the room. They entered cautiously, moving as a group. Round tables surrounded the dance floor, some with champagne glasses and small plates of dessert still in place. A woman's evening bag hung on the back of a chair. A man's suit jacket was draped over another. "Look at this," Raj called from near the stage. He pointed to the floor, where a series of strange markings formed a perfect circle about 15 feet in diameter. Maya knelt to examine them. The markings resembled no language or symbol system. She recognized flowing curves and sharp angles in patterns that somehow hurt her eyes if she looked at them too long. "These weren't made by any tool I've ever seen," she said, running her fingers over the marks. Despite appearing to be etched into the wooden floor, the surface remained perfectly smooth to the touch. "The wood isn't damaged, it's like the pattern is beneath the surface somehow." Diego stood at the edge of the circle, frowning. Whatever that figure was on the camera, it was standing right in the center of this. As if triggered by his words, the emergency lights dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again in a rhythmic pattern. From somewhere deep within the ship came a low, resonant hum that they felt more than heard, vibrating through the soles of their shoes. "I think we should go," Lena said, taking a step back toward the door. The lights stopped their pulsing and returned to normal. The humming ceased. Maya stood, her scientific curiosity battling with a growing sense of unease. "Let's check the stage first. Maybe there's something in the magician's equipment that could explain what we saw." Behind the curtain, they found a typical setup for a magic show: boxes with false bottoms, mechanical props, and a trunk large enough for a person to hide in. But when Maya opened the trunk, she found something entirely unexpected: a journal, its leather cover inscribed with the same strange symbols they'd seen on the ballroom floor. "The amazing Alessandro might have been more than just a cruise ship entertainer," she murmured, carefully opening the journal. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, diagrams, and more of the strange symbols, interspersed with normal English text. Maya read aloud from a passage near the end. "They're coming. I've felt them approaching for days now. The passengers think this is all part of the show. The strange lights, the voices at night, the feelings of being watched. The captain believes me, but it's too late to change course. They've been searching for someone with my abilities for a very long time, and now they've found me. God help everyone on this ship when they arrive." "What does that mean?" Raj asked. "Who was coming?" Maya turned to the page, finding a newspaper clipping attached with a paperclip. The headline read, "Renowned physicist Dr. Alan Chen disappears, resurfaces as cruise ship magician." Alessandro was a stage name, Maya said, scanning the article. He was actually Dr. Alan Chen, a physicist who worked on theoretical models of space-time and interdimensional travel. He disappeared from academia 3 years before the ship vanished. Why would a brilliant physicist become a cruise ship magician? Lena wondered. "It says he had some kind of breakdown after his funding was cut," Maya replied, still reading. "Started claiming he'd made contact with entities from another dimension." Diego, who had been keeping watch at the stage entrance, suddenly interrupted. "We have company." They froze, listening. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the ballroom, slow and measured, approaching the doors. "Hide," Maya whispered, tucking the journal into her backpack. They ducked behind the stage curtains just as the ballroom doors creaked open. Peering through a gap in the fabric, Maya could see a beam of light sweeping across the room, different from their flashlights, more focused, with a strange bluish tint. The footsteps crossed the dance floor, stopping at the circle of symbols. From their hiding place, they couldn't see who or what had entered. Maya held her breath, heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would give them away. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps retreated and the doors closed once more. "We need to see who that was," Maya whispered. "Are you crazy?" Lena hissed back. "We should be finding a way off this ship." "We can't leave until help arrives tomorrow," Maya reasoned. "And we need to know what we're dealing with." They crept from their hiding place and back to the ballroom, finding it empty once again. But something had changed. The circle of symbols now glowed faintly with a phosphorescent blue light. "It's the same color as the light we just saw," Raj noted, his voice shaking slightly. "Let's follow whoever that was," Maya decided. But quietly, they slipped out of the ballroom and into the corridor, where they caught a glimpse of the blue light disappearing around a corner ahead. Following at a safe distance, they tracked it down to a lower deck, through a maze of service corridors, and finally to a door marked "Engineering Authorized Personnel Only." The door stood slightly ajar, the blue light pulsing from within. Maya approached cautiously and peered through the gap. What she saw made her pull back with a gasp. The engine room had been transformed. The ship's massive engines remained, but surrounding them was an array of equipment unlike anything she'd ever seen. Sleek, almost organic-looking devices that pulsed with the same blue light they'd been following. In the center stood what appeared to be a control panel, but instead of buttons and switches, it featured flowing surfaces that rippled like water when touched. And there, working at the strange controls, was a figure in a cruise ship officer's uniform, its back to the door. As they watched, the figure turned slightly, revealing a profile that was unmistakably human. A man, perhaps in his 50s, with graying hair and the 4 stripes of a ship's chief engineer on his sleeve. "That's not possible," Diego whispered. "No one could have survived here for 5 years." Yet the evidence was before their eyes, one of the ship's crew, alive and apparently well operating machinery that shouldn't exist. The man suddenly stiffened, as if sensing their presence. Before they could retreat, he spoke without turning. "I've been expecting you," he said, his voice oddly calm. "You shouldn't have come, but now that you're here, you might as well come in. There isn't much time left before they return." Maya exchanged glances with her team, a silent question passing between them. "Stay or run?" Curiosity won. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open wider and stepped into the transformed engine room, her team reluctantly following behind. The engineer turned to face them fully, and Maya couldn't suppress a shocked gasp. His appearance was normal enough. A man in his 50s, tired eyes, weathered face. Except for one impossible detail. Around his neck hung an ID badge with his photo and name. And next to his name was the date the ID had been issued, June 17th, 2025, 5 years in the future. Maya stared at the date on the engineer's badge, trying to make sense of it. June 17th, 2025, 5 years in the future. "That's impossible," she said, pointing at his ID. "That date hasn't happened yet." The engineer, his badge identified him as Chief Engineer Thomas Wells, gave a tired smile. "Time works differently when you're dealing with them. This ship exists in multiple timeframes simultaneously. Who are they?" Raj asked, his camera forgotten in his hand. Wells gestured to the strange equipment surrounding the ship's conventional engines. "We call them the Observers. They've been watching us for longer than you can imagine, studying us through little cracks in reality." He turned back to the rippling control panel, adjusting something that caused the blue light to pulse more strongly. Dr. Chen Alessandro made contact with them accidentally through his experiments. They became interested in him. "So they took the entire ship?" Lena asked, her scientific skepticism evident in her tone. "Just for one man?" Wells shook his head. "They don't think like we do. To them, taking Alessandro alone or taking him and everything in his vicinity made no difference. It's all just specimens for study." Maya approached one of the strange devices. It resembled a clear tube filled with swirling blue liquid, but when she looked closely, she realized the liquid was actually millions of tiny symbols, similar to those they'd seen on the ballroom floor, flowing and rearranging themselves continuously. "Don't touch anything," Wells warned. "The technology is semi-organic. It responds to human contact in unpredictable ways." "What happened to everyone else?" Diego asked. The passengers, the other crew? A shadow passed over Wells' face. They're in the hold. The way he said it sent a chill through Maya. Are they alive? In a way. Wells gestured for them to follow him. It's better if I show you. He led them out of the engine room and down a series of corridors to a freight elevator. As they descended to the lowest level of the ship, Wells explained. When the observers took the ship, they were primarily interested in Alessandro and his understanding of interdimensional physics, but they became curious about the rest of us too, about human biology, psychology, social structures. They created a laboratory of sorts. The elevator stopped with a soft ding. The doors opened to reveal a corridor unlike any other they'd seen on the ship. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered with the same organic-looking technology from the engine room, pulsing with blue light. I was in the engine room when it happened. Wells continued as they walked. I was partially shielded by the ship's reactor. It gave me a kind of immunity to their influence. I can move between the time frames, observe without being observed. Time frames? Maya asked. The past, present, and future exist simultaneously to them. This ship exists in your time, 2020, but also in fragments of 1620, 2025, and times beyond. The observers moved through all of them effortlessly. They reached a massive door at the end of the corridor. Wells placed his hand on a panel beside it, and the blue light scanned his palm. I've had 5 years to learn how their technology works, he explained as the door slid open, and 5 years to try to find a way to save everyone. The sight beyond the door struck them all into silence. They stood at the edge of what should have been the ship's main cargo hold, but instead opened into a vast space that couldn't possibly fit within the physical dimensions of the vessel. The hold stretched at least a mile in every direction, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. And throughout this impossible space were transparent chambers, hundreds of them, each containing people frozen in tableau. In one, a family of 4 sat at a dinner table, forks raised to motionless mouths. In another, an elderly couple danced, suspended in mid-step. Crew members stood at their posts. Passengers lounged by a pool that had been recreated in its entirety. A pianist's fingers hovered above keys that would never be struck. Every passenger and crew member, Wells said quietly, preserved perfectly at the moment they were taken. They don't age. They don't need food or water. They're just waiting. Waiting for what? Lena whispered, her eyes wide with horror and wonder. For the study to be completed. The observers exist outside our understanding of time. To them, what seems like years to us might be minutes. Maya approached the nearest chamber where a young woman stood frozen while applying lipstick. Are they conscious? Do they know what's happening to them? Wells hesitated. I don't think so. Not in the way we understand consciousness. They're in a state of suspended animation. But sometimes I think I see their eyes move, following me as I walk past. Raj, who had been filming everything, suddenly lowered his camera. This is beyond anything we could have imagined. No one will believe this, they will, Wells said grimly, because the observers aren't done. They've been expanding their study beyond the ship. Haven't you wondered why no one found a massive cruise ship in the middle of the Amazon for 5 years? It's because they've been affecting the surroundings too, altering perceptions, redirecting satellites, changing what people see when they look in this direction. Until our drone somehow broke through, Maya realized. Wells nodded. Their influence fluctuates based on their activity cycles. You got lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, and found the ship during a period when their control was weakened. What are they doing with all this research? Diego asked, gesturing to the chambers. What's the point? I don't know for certain, Wells admitted. But based on what I've learned from their technology, I believe they're preparing for some kind of merger. Merger? Maya echoed. Between their reality and ours, they're learning everything they can about us before they make full contact. Wells checked his watch, an ordinary digital one that seemed strangely out of place among the advanced technology. And based on my calculations, they'll be returning to check on their specimens in less than 12 hours. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. You mean they'll be coming back? Here? To this ship? Yes. And they'll be very interested to find 4 new specimens who wandered in voluntarily. The team exchanged horrified glances. We need to get out of here, Lena said urgently. Now, Wells shook his head. It's not that simple. The observers have a field around the ship that prevents anyone from leaving once they've entered. That's why I'm still here after 5 years. There has to be a way, Maya insisted. You've had 5 years to study their technology. There must be something we can do. A spark lit in Wells's tired eyes. There might be. I've been working on something, but I never had enough people to attempt it. With the 5 of us, it might be possible. He led them to a secluded corner of the vast hold, where a makeshift workshop had been set up. Tools, both ordinary and alien, were scattered across tables. Diagrams covered the walls, featuring the same strange symbols they'd seen throughout the ship. The observers used the circle in the ballroom as their entry point, Wells explained, pointing to a diagram of the symbol-inscribed circle. It's a kind of dimensional gateway. I believe we can reverse its function, turn it from an entrance into an exit. And that would get us out? Diego asked. In theory, it could do much more. It could potentially send the entire ship back to its original location in time, breaking the observer's hold on everyone on board. Maya studied the diagrams, her scientific mind struggling to comprehend the physics involved. Even if this works, what about you? Your ID says 2025. Wouldn't sending the ship back to 2020 create some kind of paradox? Wells smiled sadly. I've existed outside normal time for so long I'm not sure normal rules apply to me anymore. But if it means saving everyone on this ship, I'm willing to take that chance. What do you need us to do? Maya asked. The ballroom circle needs to be activated from multiple points simultaneously, Wells explained. I've created devices that can interface with their technology, but I could never operate them all at once by myself. He opened a case containing 5 metal discs, each inscribed with the flowing symbols and containing a small vial of the blue, symbol-filled liquid. These need to be placed at specific points around the circle and activated in perfect synchronization. And if we succeed? Lena asked. Best case scenario, the ship returns to its original time and place. The passengers and crew are freed and the observers lose their connection to our reality. And worst case? Raj asked quietly. Wells hesitated. The temporal energies could tear the ship apart or trap us in a time loop, or there are other possibilities I can't even predict. A heavy silence fell over the group as they considered their options. Stay and become specimens for the mysterious observers, or risk everything on a desperate plan based on technology they couldn't begin to understand. When do we try? Maya finally asked. We'll need to set up the equipment and run final calculations, Wells said, checking his watch again. We should be ready about an hour before the observers are due to return. That gives us our best chance. As they gathered the equipment, Maya felt a strange sensation, like being watched. She turned to look at the nearest chamber, where a small girl stood frozen while feeding bread to imaginary ducks at a pond that had been recreated down to the last detail. For just a moment, Maya could have sworn the girl's eyes shifted to look directly at her, a silent plea visible in their depths. Then Wells called her name, and when she looked back, the girl was frozen once more, her gaze fixed on nothing. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, trapped in those perfect, horrible stasis chambers, 3,000 souls were watching, waiting, hoping for rescue, the rescue she and her team now had less than 11 hours to attempt.